Hello and welcome to Living in Chicago, the podcast where I get to interview real Chicagoans about the neighborhoods that they live, work, and play in. My name is Jake Lyons. I am your host, and in this episode, I interview Chris Clepp, who is a longtime financial advisor and resident of the Albany Park neighborhood. If you're not familiar with Albany Park, that's okay. A lot of you might not be. It's not one of the more talked about neighborhoods, but in this episode, we are going to explore the reasons why that should change because Albany Park has a lot of things going for it. Very cool, very eclectic neighborhood. And it is located, it's on the north side, kind of northwest side, not, all the way out by the airport, but kind of somewhere in between the airport and the lake, I suppose. The boundaries, the kind of geographic boundaries of it are a little hard to pin down because a lot of it borders along the river, which is cool in its own right because that means there are lots of really nice like riverfront parks and trails and things that you can find pretty much all throughout like the outskirts of the neighborhood. But then from north to south, it starts at Montrose Avenue and goes up north to Foster Avenue for parts of it, and to the east, it borders the river, like I said, and then to the west, it more or less borders Elston Avenue. And that's all I'm going to go into for now. I'm going to go ahead and let the interview speak for itself in terms of what all there is to do and things to like or maybe not like about the neighborhood. And let's go ahead and get right to the interview with Chris Clepp so that he can tell you what it's like to live in the Albany Park neighborhood of Chicago. All right. I'm very pleased to have Christopher Clepp on the show. Christopher is the owner of Building Towards Wealth and is a longtime financial planner who is passionate about working with business owners who would benefit from having an objective partner in their financial lives, which we'll definitely get into a little bit more in detail a little later. He's a husband, a father of three, including two little ones that take up a lot of his free time. And to the topic of this specific show is a resident of the Albany Park neighborhood of Chicago. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you having me today as a guest on your show, Jake.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on and trusting this despite the fact that we've only met each other once. I appreciate the trust in seeing that. So yeah. Hey, so you are in Albany Park. So let's just go ahead and start there. What are you from? Are you from the Chicago area to begin with, or what's been your journey to here?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Chicago. I grew up on the northwest side, right by Harlem and Irving Plaza. So my dad was a police officer. So like many of my fellow grade school classmates, we all lived just a little bit inside of the city limits, and so that was pretty common back in the day. I stayed there until I went through high school. I've moved away twice from the city of Chicago. I lived in Houston when I went to college. I moved back, and then I moved back to Dallas for a few years in the 2000s. But I have lived on the northwest side. I've lived in a couple different places in Logan Square, in Humboldt Park, in Avondale, and now what is assumably my forever home with my young children in Albany Park is where we decided to settle on in Chicago. And I have come to realize that I'm Chicago through and through, and I'm not going anywhere.
Nice. Love it. Yeah, that is interesting about, you mentioned a lot of police and firefighters and people like that do tend to stay along the outermost edges of the city. I know like Edison Park and some, places like that tend to have a lot. What what do you think it is about that? Why do you think that is?
Well, so I think a lot of it comes with the cost of living. I know where, living downtown or, even, in Logan Square or Humboldt Park does not come inexpensively. And so they tend to, they tend to move towards the outer rims of the city, which makes it a little bit more affordable for them to stay within the city limits. I know that was, a concern when we were growing up, was finding an affordable place to live, within the city. And then because I think obviously policemen and firemen tend to have other policemen and firemen as friends, so that wherever they end up, they just sort of start congregating in higher and higher
Hmm.
concentrations. I mean, I know I have two nephews on the force, and they live just in one lives up in Norwood Park, one lives
Hmm.
up on the not far from where I lived. It's been a long time honored tradition for the Chicago city workers to live along the outer edge.
Hmm. Because of course they have to live in within city limits, as that's kind of a stipulation of their positions, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. What was so you spent some time in Texas? You said Houston and Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this I guess that was a while ago at this point. I know Dallas especially is very different, and even now than it was, what 5, 10 years ago. I mean, that place is just the growth there has been insane. But what was your experience like in those places as compared to the Midwest Chicago area where you spent the majority of your life?
Yeah, so Houston was my college years, so I definitely had a really good time. Maybe sometimes too good of a time, I think, in my college
Hmm.
yeat in Houston. I met a
As you
lot
do.
of really really great people that are still friends today, that have quite often moved across the country, and we still stay in contact. So you mentioned I have two little ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old at home. I also have a 26-year-old that coincided with the college years, right? And so then I moved back to Dallas to be closer to her. I also opened up an office of an insurance brokerage that I was a partner in at the time. That was the reason for me moving back to Dallas. And there was a lot of things that go into Dallas, but not my favorite city in the country by any stretch of the imagination. I think that was one of those things that anywhere that you're at, there's obviously some warts to it. I always joke that in Chicago and Houston, pretty similar. In Chicago, you don't want to go outside in January, February, and March. That happens to be July, August, and September in Houston. It's just for
Hmm.
polar opposite reasons, right? We have car starters on our cars up here to warm up our car in the winter. They do it to turn on the air conditioning in the summer. So no matter what, you can always find something that you don't like about it, but you have to find the things that are most important to you. And in Dallas, it doesn't really have, I don't think, a ton to do. There's not really a lot of great nature out there. Not that Chicago, the Midwest is necessarily known for its beauty, but we have an amazing lakefront to go to
Hmm.
right downtown. Dallas was up and coming in the food scene. Like I'm a big, I love going out to eat. I love one of the things that I love most about Chicago is the quality of the dining around here, and Dallas can't hold a candle to it at all. So I've been around. I've been to most of the major cities around this country. Spent a little bit of time, obviously vacationing, a little bit different than living. But my wife and I, we made a very conscious decision, in 2021 when we bought our house in Albany Park. It was in the middle of the pandemic. My practice had gone virtual. My wife can work just about anywhere in the country that there's some medical research. We thought about moving to Knoxville and Ann Arbor and Salt Lake City and Denver and all. We could have moved anywhere that we wanted to, and we decided that we wanted to stay in Chicago because we loved everything that Chicago had and the people that we know and all that Chicago has to offer. We specifically decided to stay here as opposed to anywhere else in the country that we could have gone to.
Well said. Agreed. Yeah, and I mean, even to cling on to the point about the nature and not having a whole lot to do. It is true. I mean, obviously, Chicago is no like Denver or Northern California or anything like that. Seattle, like, there's going to be more stuff to do outside in those places, obviously. But yeah, you mentioned the lakefront, and then even don't sleep on some of these forest reserves and things like that we have around here. I mean, if you're willing to go out anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours tops from the city, there are some really beautiful parks and forest preserves, full on waterfalls, and you really don't feel like you're in the Midwest anymore when you go to these. You might as well be in California for some of these places. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as someone that appreciates the fact that if I want to, I can jump on my bike and ride from my house pretty much unobstructed all the way up to the Botanic Gardens, along the riverfront trails and
Hmm.
through the forest reserves. It's absolutely amazing. And having lived in in Dallas and spent some time in Houston, those are not very walkable cities. I am someone who enjoys walking. I try to get some of my physical fitness in by walking lots of places. And Chicago is an amazingly walkable city, and it's one of the reasons why we did decide to stay here, on a permanent basis, is because we love being able just to get out and walk to the little corner bakery and the little corner grocery store and pick up what it is that we need, and have all these great, particularly for Albany Park, all these mom and pop restaurants right around the corner. Absolutely phenomenal cuisine from just about any ethnicity
Hmm.
that you could think of. And then also the Chicago Park District does an amazing job. There are probably a dozen parks that are within for us, a walk, which is within a couple miles, and some larger parks like Horner Park, Independence Park, some smaller parks along the way that our kids love the playgrounds. I could tell you which has the best. I can give you the swing set review for just about every single park in the area.
Yeah. What's the is the grading system for swing sets? Is it just the degree of WD-40 that it needs on any given day? Is that
Well, for my son, it's the right blend of of dairy, of being fun without being too scary for him. Although he's now at that point where nothing's too scary. And my 3-year-old daughter, she's always been a daredevil. So I guess our grading scale will be changing as we move along. But yeah, absolutely. It's a lot about how bright the colors are, I think, for him, and
uh-huh.
how great the slides are.
I'll bet you're thrilled at the development of their Daredevil ways.
Listen, my wife and I are two sides of the coin. In that I love my children to be daring, and my wife is
Hmm.
definitely of a more cautious nature. But I think it provides a good balance for us to have kids that are adventurous without being reckless.
Yeah. And you're a financial planner, so you probably have good insurance. It's fine.
We have great insurance. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, so we can let's hover here around the Albany Park topic then. So of all the places that you have lived in the city and could live in the city, which is the whole city really, why Albany Park? Why'd you choose that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, obviously, I think Albany Park is is very affordable in comparison to a lot of the other neighborhoods in Chicago. To get what we want, and to be reasonable in our expenditure, not just what we could afford, but what made sense and what was a value for us. It was important for us, being close to public transportation is important. We're right here at the end of the Brown Line, which makes it really easy. Again, I love. I'm not a big fan of the areas of Chicago that have, West Loop certainly has its place, but it's not something I would want to live in. I like sort of the real city feel. Like, I was in Logan Square and that got a little too developed, and I moved to Humboldt Park, and that started getting more developed, right? And so, like, I'm always moving sort of to the next neighborhood along the way. Avondale now is becoming more and more built up. I love the real feel of Chicago. I love the feel of being able to go, walk down the street into the bakery and get the best conchas in the city, and then be able to go, 2 blocks and get some of the best pho in the city, and
Hmm.
in the best Persian food, and so on and so forth. So
Hmm.
I love really the diversity and everything that it has to offer. And it's a very, very walkable neighborhood. I can get pretty much everything that I need without needing a car, which is which I really really enjoy. And the neighbors around here are absolutely are absolutely fantastic. So it really just added up to everything that we wanted in in a place to raise our children.
Hmm. Very good. You've lived here, you said in 21, so going on 3 years now.
So we moved into our place in October of 2021, and so we were in Avondale for a few years before that, and so we own a apartment building in Avondale. And so once our daughter got up and mobile, I felt really bad for our downstairs neighbors having to hear not one but two children get up and start running around, and we owned the building, so it's not like they really could complain too much. But
Hmm.
but obviously we wanted to be mindful of that, and we just needed some more space for them to be able to grow up, and we were able to find a great place with a nice roomy yard, and we ended up on, for us, what was the perfect block. We've gotten to meet a lot of our neighbors, a lot of children on the street, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah. So in the couple years that you've been here, what are some of those sort of hidden gem restaurants and shops and things like that that you've really taken a liking to?
Yeah, I would have to say, first and foremost, Kebabi Grill on Kedzie is absolutely my number one go to. Easily the place that we order takeout from the most in the area. But that whole strip of food, whether it is Nuna Kebab, which is a classic in the neighborhood,
Hmm.
Mamanzari, which is now the elevated tasting menu Persian right there, Antepli, which is Turkish, just north of there, all very, very good. Auntie Kim's, which is over there as well, which is Korean food. Moving a little bit further down Lawrence, El Zangrito, which is a phenomenal Mexican. So I guess that's starting to get almost over into Lincoln Square-ish. Is always really, really good. We love
Yep.
Capri Cafe to stop in for coffee. We love our Something Sweet donuts for the kids. That absolutely is their favorite place to get into and get their sprinkled donuts. And that's just a few of the places. El Tezcal, which is for
Hmm.
Arborea, all sorts of great places in the neighborhood for sure.
Time for the Real Estate Stats Corner, presented by me, Jake Lyons, real estate advisor here in the Chicago area with App Properties and my website, thechicagohomesource.com. All information provided here is courtesy of InfoSparks and Rentometer. In this section, I am going to provide you with three statistics that I believe at least give you a general sense of what real estate prices are looking like in the Albany Park neighborhood as of January of 2024, which is the most recent data that I have as of the time that I am recording this. I do this because, well, A, I'm a real estate agent, a little bit biased, but also, what really is a neighborhood without real estate, right? So I think that these things are super relevant to any discussion about any neighborhood for all kinds of different reasons. So the three statistics that I'm going to be throwing out there are the median sales prices for a two-bed condo, for a house of at least three bedrooms, and then the rental median price, monthly rental median price for a two-bedroom apartment, all in the Albany Park neighborhood. So the first stat, two-bed condos in Albany Park as of January 2024. The median sales price on that, we can go ahead and just round that up a couple $100 here and just say $225,000. That's the median sales price for a two-bed condo in Albany Park. And again, that's median sales price. So 50% sold for more, 50% sold for less. That is just the price that occurred right in the middle of all the prices for all the condos that were sold over the last year, basically, is how this stat goes. And if you are more interested in a house in Albany Park, the median sales price on that is $530,000. And if you are more interested in renting a two-bedroom apartment in the Albany Park neighborhood, The median monthly sales rental price on that is coming out to $1,625. So there you have it. That is, there's obviously way more to it than just the median sales price. There's all kinds of different variables at play here, but we can go down the weeds on that another time if you are interested. But if you want to see more of what all is on the market right now in the Albany Park neighborhood, or really anywhere in Chicago, you can go to thechicagohomesource.com and you can find that in the show notes. Wow, you were really ready for that question.
Listen, I think a lot about food. Let's be honest. I think a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, man, I'm so bad at remembering the names of restaurants. I'm always kind of like, oh yeah, that's the place that served this kind of food there on that corner. But I'm just as soon as I leave, it was just like another place that serves food. I don't know. I need to get better at remembering names like that because that was great. What about just so that was on the food level. Is there any kind of like little eclectic shops or anything like that? I know like Lawrence Avenue has a ton of little things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, it tends to be a lot more about the grocery stores around here
Yeah.
for us.
Hmm.
Chicago Produce, Lindo Michoacan are two sort of staples that we do. I do I do all the shopping and cooking for food in the house. So my wife, one of the things that works out really well is my wife doesn't like to cook, and I love to cook. So it's a good division of the responsibilities. And to your point, right, about remembering restaurants names, my wife remembers none of these places. She could not tell you any of these things, but I am sort of relied upon a lot amongst my friends to give
Mm,
recommendations for restaurants or little places to stop in. So I think that has cemented some of these names into my memory a little bit more than normal, because I have to give them out on a regular basis to people for places to stop in at.
that makes sense. Repetition helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about. I'm always interested in exploring the when somebody makes a conscious decision to raise their children in the city, because I think such the sort of average or common route is live in the city for a little bit, get married, have kids, go to the suburbs for XYZ reason. Insert whatever the reason is here. It's going to be different for all of them. But what goes into that choice for you to kind of shun that common route and say, no, I'm going to raise my kids right here in Albany Park in the city, and they're going to be raised this way.
Yeah, and listen, I understand people's decision making process in going through that, and every person needs to make the decision that they feel is best for themselves and their children, especially. And that was the decision process that we made. There is no doubt that there are some issues with um, Chicago public schools and the system in which you get into those schools. One of the things that I find, to generally be true is that the people that complain about CPS the loudest, though, are the people that don't have children in CPS. And then even people that are in CPS, they may say, well, XYZ school is not good, but their children are not at XYZ school, they're at ABC school, right? And we found that in talking with people that are at these individual schools, they often often like the school that they're at. In addition to that, the lottery system and the magnet schools and things like that are certainly something that is an obstacle to overcome if you're going to keep your children in the Chicagoland area. There's a company that I was introduced to called Chicago GPS, And so what they do is they do some seminars and helping people understand actually how that system works. There's a tier system that's based on socioeconomic indicators, and so there's 4 tiers within the city. There's some apportionment to each of these schools based off of that, particularly when you get to the selective enrollment schools. And so I came to the belief that if you have enough, time, energy, and resources, you're going to be able to navigate that system. In addition, I am someone who did go to a Catholic school my entire life, right? I went to St. Priscilla's on the Northwest side. I ended up going to high school in Oak Park and Fenwick. So I believe, the Chicago Catholic school system still has a robust education system here, in Chicago, not maybe what it was in the 80s and 90s when I was going to it, but that is also a backup for people that are able to afford private school if that's the the fallback. And quite honestly, when we made that decision, we felt that we would be able to get our children into a school that we felt comfortable with, and that if we weren't, then we would just send them to, say, a St. Benedict's or something like that, which is not far from the area. So we're fortunate in the fact that our son was able to get into Edison, which is located here in Albany Park. I get to walk my son to school every day, 5 blocks to school. It's my favorite 25 minutes of the day is that little walk with him to school. It's just me and him talking about the day. And, Mike, there is obviously a concern that we have right now because Mayor Johnson and his head of CPS is talking about getting rid of the best high schools in the city, like Peyton and Jones. And, these are crown jewels of the education system, not only for the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and are some of the highest rated high schools in the country. And they're talking about getting rid of these. That is an entire soapbox that I could get onto. But my hope is that they will not mess up the good parts of the Chicago public school system and be able to elevate the other levels. I think that there's a lot of people that do have good intentions that are involved in here. And I think that that CPS is generally overlooked. There obviously are some problems with the system, but I think that you can get to that. And I'm also a firm believer that in all of these scenarios, the involvement of the parents is going to be the number one overriding factor on success or failure. My wife and I are fortunate to be in a position where we're able to spend a lot of time with our children, that we both generally work from home. My wife works from home 3 days a week. I'm my own boss and running my own practice. So we're able to have a lot of flexibility to deal with any of the bumps that come along the road. Not everybody is as fortunate to that. So we spent a lot of time, with our children, and so far our experience, admittedly relatively limited, which is about 4 months now of the Chicago public school system, has been absolutely fantastic.
Good to hear. Okay. Yeah, that's that is interesting about wanting to get rid of those schools. I have so many follow-up questions on that, but I'll just Google it later. Because I don't know, but yeah, interesting. So the magnet programs and the lottery and all that. For some reason my understanding was that more comes into play when you get to high school age. Is that those are a thing on the elementary level as well?
Absolutely. So,
Okay.
so I was a little surprised too when I learned that my then 4-year-old son would be going in to take a test to figure out whether or not he would get into any of the gifted and talented programs here in Chicago. I don't know what that test even looks like. They give you some general ideas, but but there's that. There is, you essentially get to apply to. You have a neighborhood school that you automatically get into, right? So ours is Hogan. There are you can put 20 other schools on your list. And you may get into one, you may get into 20 other schools, and then you decide which one it is that you eventually want to go to. We got into Edison, which is a gifted and talented program. We were fortunate in that aspect. We got into two other schools that were also highly rated that we would have been very happy to send our son to. Would have been a little bit more of a commute to get to it than walking 5 blocks. But we would have been fine with any of those choices. But it is a nerve-wracking procedure, and understanding the acceptance rates and the tiering system and all of these different components, again, can be very daunting. And I could understand why it would cause a lot of stress. I mean, quite honestly, it caused my wife a ton of stress. Me a little bit less so, because I was fairly confident on the statistical probability of getting into one of the schools that we really liked. It wasn't a probability to get into any one school, but the probability of getting into one of the schools that we liked was pretty high.
You ran your Monte Carlo scenarios, and it came out looking good.
That's good. Did a strong risk assessment. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad your son was able to, at an elite level, identify, apples as red and bananas as yellow, and I mean, whatever that test could have looked like as a 4-year-old.
Johnny had 5 red apples, and Lisa had three yellow bananas. How many pieces of fruit did they have? I guess.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, thanks for going down that the road of schools and all that. Whenever I have a chance to explore that, I always like to, because I always get good responses from parents talking about the school system here, whether for better or worse. I will get responses. All right. So back to just Albany Park. If someone were to visit Albany Park for just one day, what would be the perfect way to spend that day? I'm guessing there's going to be some food involved.
I mean, listen, obviously I am an extremely food driven person. I travel on my stomach. When my wife and I were dating, and even after we got married, one of our favorite things to do was what we call a walkabout, which is where we would get our exercise in by going to walk, 6, 7, 8 miles, but we might stop off at 4, 5, 6 places along the way, and you walk another mile, and you stop for a drink, and you walk another mile, and you get a bite here or a snack there. So, so I think some of the places that I'd already mentioned were fantastic stop offs for people. You get the donut at Something Sweet, the latte at Capri Cafe. Maybe you go wander off to the Riverfront Trail, go walk a little further north. So this is always where I catch myself, right? Because I always think of Albany Park, probably expanding beyond what the actual technical limits of it. If you ask me where Albany Park stops and starts, I probably couldn't tell you 100%. If you consider River Park that goes up north, I don't know if that's technically still in Albany Park or East Albany Park. But I think that's a fantastic little trail to stroll upon as you walk around, as you walk up north and be able to get a feel, and you get that interesting little feel of being out of the city, but you're back into the city, pretty quickly. I think you can't go wrong whether you're taking your tour, down Lawrence or down Kedzie are a few of my favorite, all the restaurants that are there. For me, I love Frank's Barbershop. If you need a little haircut, you can get a little touch up, during, as you walk around. So just so many great places. It's hard for me to think of because for me, I guess if you have kids, I mean, there's a lot of stopping off into the parks. So, we end up over at Ravenswood Manor or Horner Park, which are a little bit outside the Albany Park, limits, but we definitely walk through those areas, and great playgrounds for the kids. at either of those, and the the playground at Hogan also is really really great for your kids to play with. So a lot of what I end up doing, right, is is either it tends to be walking with kids to playground. So I think that
Hmm.
probably shades my experience around here, around those areas.
Nice. Is there anything that has surprised you so far about Albany Park, or maybe a misconception that people have about Albany Park?
Um, so one of the things I think I was surprised a little bit about is, and this tends to be about our block, in particular, is just the number of families with young children over in this area, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I grew up, in a time where we were, where we would be running around outside with the neighborhood kids at all hours and play
Hmm.
pickup, play ball at the
Hmm.
local baseball diamond. And for us here, we have a couple block parties a year. We have our block sale every year. There's really a great sense of community, particularly in our area, that I think is absolutely fantastic. Uh, it's very, very friendly, very, very welcoming, very, very walkable for everything that it is that you want. I think a lot of people don't really know a lot about Albany Park, quite honestly, until
Nope.
when I mention Albany Park, a lot of times, even to people that live in the city, they're like, "Oh, where is that again?" And so you can tell them
Hmm.
Lawrence and Kimball, and they have a general idea, I guess, about where that is, but they're not always super sure where on the map actually Albany Park is. So this very much, I think, having lived in Logan Square and seen, while there still are some mom and pop shops in Logan Square, a lot of that stuff has sort of died out. And I think that what people may remember, Logan Square being, 10, 15 years ago, is much, much more prevalent, in this sort of area in around Albany Park and Ravenswood Manor and things like that. I think that's what you really get now up here.
Yeah, I find if you just say, the end of the Brown line, the Kimball stop, people can at least kind of place that a little bit, because they've at least, looked at a map of the CTA a few times if they are familiar with Chicago at all, so they can kind of, make that connection that way. But yeah, that's a
Yeah, I
good
mean,
answer.
maybe the biggest surprise for me, right, is how pleasant the brown line is to ride into the city. It may be a little bit
Oh
slower than the
yeah.
blue line getting in the city, but because it is above ground the entire time, you get to
Yep.
see so much of the city, and it's so interesting. It's such a great way. Like I've almost entirely given up driving into the city because I can take the brown line in and switch off to the red at Belmont if I need to get a little bit further into the city, and can figure it out pretty well from there.
Oh yeah. No, the Brown line is the Cadillac of the train lines for sure. I would agree with that. Or is that an outdated reference now? I guess Cadillacs are still cool, but what would the thing be now more? I guess the Benz, the Audi of the whatever you would say.
Listen, I'm going to go with Cadillac. I'm with you. I'm of that generation where the Cadillac, where everything was Cadillac. It was top end.
Yeah, there you go. And of that generation, you know what? That's actually going to be a great segue into talking about your business. I do have one question that can also tie into that. So, how has either Albany Park, but you've only been in Albany Park a year and a half or two, but just Chicago in general, or Albany Park if you can tie that in. How have those areas influenced your business and creative endeavors?
Yeah, so I think, for me, obviously, I think, being in Chicago, the vibrancy of Chicago, less so in January and February, but more so in the spring and summer, right? Obviously, the city is so full of energy, and I really feed off that type of, I'm very much someone who needs feel that, to sort of energize myself. I think that does tie directly into my business, right? So, what I do is I run a wealth management practice for Gen X and Gen Y business owners and Henrys, right, which are high earner, not rich yet, because I love the energy of entrepreneurs and people that are out there trying to do good in life and do better and be builders in life, and those people that are running around with their hair on fire all the time, like I am. And that's, and so it all feeds into that. I love a city that has the energy that you can feel. April, May come around in Chicago, and you can almost feel like the energy is just ready to explode in the city as it warms up. And I think entrepreneurs, business owners, high earners generally are walking around like that most of the time, right? They have this energy that's always keeps them propelling forward, and those are the type of people that I like working with, right? And we really focus on comprehensive financial planning. We help our clients understand that their most valuable asset is their time, and how can they get back more of that while still knowing that they're going to be financially secure. And that's what we're really going to help our clients with, is that they all want to have more time, less stress, and pay less in taxes. We're going to help them with all three of those things.
Yeah, time, literally the most valuable resource in the known universe. So
Yes.
it's definitely important to get as much of that as you can. And the business is Building Towards Wealth. Is that the name of the business? I know that's the URL, which, by the way, as somebody who has spent a lot of time on GoDaddy researching various domain names for different projects and businesses myself, buildingtowardswealth.com, primo, love it.
Listen,
That was a good find.
I'm not gonna lie that I was pretty stoked when I came across that one, because we're building for builders, right? And so one of the things to always pay attention, I have nothing to definitively back this up, but more than a few anecdotes about people talking about how with GoDaddy, if you go search a name, you better be ready to buy it if you find the right one, because a lot of times it seems that if you're not ready to buy it at, I don't know what, $10 or whatever it is, and you go back a day later, amazingly now it costs $100. And so I own a few different URLs for different things that if it comes across my mind that I might want to do it, I just go buy another URL. But Building Towards Wealth is the name of my company. It embodies everything that we do. We're not working with retirees. We're working with people that are building towards their wealth. A lot of our clients are entrepreneurs that just want to try to figure out, how one day maybe they're going to be able to get out of their business. What do they actually need to have to be able to recreate their income? How they're going to figure out what their next chapter is going to be. A lot of business owners don't actually want to retire. They just want the autonomy to know that they can walk away when they want to. And that's what we're really focusing on them to do. And then also helping them, really be that partner for them, because a business owner has a lot of people, a lot of professionals they're dealing with their life. They have their accountant, and they have their business attorney and their estate planning attorney. They have their commercial real estate agent. If they're trying to exit, they may have an investment banker and a business broker, and all of these people, right? And they all speak a slightly different dialect of business language. So myself as a business owner and a financial planner, I can sort of help those business owners make sure that all these different professionals are pushing in the same direction, because most business owners have never had their business attorney and their estate planning attorney or their accountant have any sort of communication between them. And it's required on it's expected that the business owner is going to sort of push all these people in the same direction, but the business owner oftentimes does not know what direction it is that they're supposed to be pushing them in. And that's a lot where we can step in and help them make sure that everybody is rowing in the same direction, pulling in the same direction on that rope, so that the business owner can get whatever it is that they want out of life, right? And we have clients that are working on trying to, be done working, by 50, and we have people that are trying to create multi-generational wealth to pass off, to family members down the road, and everything in between. And So we want to, again, what the biggest thing for us, Gen X, Gen Y, right? So that's like that 35 to 57-year-old business owner, or if you're a Henry, right, like, which is high earner, not rich yet, which is, your doctors, your attorneys, your tech, your tech. Those are the people that their time is best spent doing something else. That's the highest and best use of their time, and let me do all the stuff that they don't want to think about, that will move the needle, but doesn't really elevate them to be excited. I mean, listen, not everybody gets as excited about tax planning as I do.
Very few, I would say. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good value. So basically you're saying that you can come in and be sort of the translator for all of these different dialects that are going on in the business owner's world, and almost sort of become like the sun that all these different other entities and professionals and attorneys and planners and agents and whatnot can kind of orbit around from the perspective of your client. Is that a decent way to put it, or not?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, a business owner has their business plus all of their personal pieces to the puzzle. And there's a big difference between having a pile of puzzle pieces and having a puzzle that fits together, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that puzzle, all those puzzle pieces fit together for that client, because your account may be doing what's really makes sense for them in their mind, and your benefits broker may be really doing what makes sense for them in their mind. But if there's not a communication between the two of them, there can often be negative ramifications for the business owner.
Mm-hmm. And so why the decision to mainly focus on Gen X and the kind of baby boomer generation, and why do you hate millennials and Gen Z?
Well, so Gen Y, so Gen X and Gen Y, right? So Gen Y technically is millennials, right?
Okay.
So older than Gen X is the boomers, right?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so at least in part of it is because I need to make sure that whoever I deal with can use DocuSign and Zoom properly.
Hmm.
But no, so quite honestly, someone who is 70, either they've made it or they haven't made it, right? There's some cool tax planning stuff that we could do for them, but I don't feel like I'm making a huge impact in the overall quality of their life, in the same way that I think that I can make an impact for someone who is in their 40s or early 50s, who may have 10, 20, 30 years of working life still ahead of them. There's a lot that we can do. And so it's one of those things where, if you're, a mile away and you turn 1 degree, you're not changing the direction that much. If you're 100 miles away and you change 1 degree, you can have a huge effect on them just by making some small changes for them. And that's what elevates me. And quite honestly, I'm a 48-year-old business owner with 3 kids, 2 of them small. I'm just solving for my problems the same over and over. And I'll be honest, if you ask me about Social Security strategy as it stands today for someone taking it today, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that, because my clients don't do that. By the same token, someone who deals a lot with retirees isn't really thinking about proper risk management and some of the important choices that a 40-year-old should do. So if that person's client base is mainly older people, I don't think that they can really connect with the needs and desires for someone who's my age, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I just this whole time leading up to this interview, I just thought it would be fun to ask you that question that way. But yeah, that makes sense. It's just not your core competency, and yeah, you're naturally gonna serve the clients that are the most similar to you. I mean, that's why I'm in my business. Do a lot of first time home buyers and people that are looking to get small multifamily buildings and things like that, because I'm in my early to mid 30s, and those are the kind of people that I'm around all the time. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can identify this. You can identify with that, right? And with the people that want to buy that are thinking about or wanting to buy, small, multifamily units. As speaking as an owner of one, right? It's you got to make sure that they're the right type of people and have the right type of mindset to do it.
Yep. Yep. 100%. What would be the best way? I have kind of one more roundup question on the Albany Park stuff, but before we even do that, what would be the best way for somebody to get a hold of you if somebody's out there listening and says, hey, that's for me, I need that.
Yeah, the best way, right? So is going to my website, buildingtowardswealth.com. It's buildingtowardswealth.com. On there, you could see, blogs that I have written. I write all the blogs that are on there. They go back for 4 years. There's, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can go right there. You can also find the Building Towards Wealth YouTube channel. You can also find me at Chris Clepp on LinkedIn. That's last name is Chris, last name is Clepp, Clepp on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to me there. And I think, the important thing is that anybody who's out there that needs some help, right? So there's a lot of times where we talk with people that are like, well, I'm not sure I really need a financial advisor. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just need, sort of an ABC plan, like, hey, these are the three or four things that everybody should be doing. And we'll point them towards resources that will help them do that so that they can get to the point where they actually do have enough complexity that they would benefit from having a real financial advisor.
All right. Very good. Thanks for that. And last question I have for you on the Chicago and Albany Park stuff is just bottom line here. Why should somebody want to live in Chicago to begin with? And if they go that far, why should they want to live in Albany Park?
Yeah, so I think that Chicago certainly gets a bad rap. And Chicago, like any other city, is not a perfect city. But if you enjoy a diverse city that is very walkable, has a great park system, has a great library system, always has something to do for you as an adult, for if you're a parent, if you always want something to do for your children. There is an endless array of things to happen here. I think that the crime largely gets overblown. Certainly, it is it's worse in certain neighborhoods than others. But as someone who has lived the majority of their life here, I've never really had problems. Not in the same way that people that I've known that in Denver or Houston or New Orleans or Abilene or any other place really has have, right. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think that there's a lot to love about it if you value those things. For someone that wants to drive everywhere and doesn't want to know your neighbors and things like that, then maybe the suburbs or someplace else is better for you. Chicago certainly has some interesting weather, as we're about to find out this week, with 10 inches of snow. But I'm someone who, even when it's 10 inches of snow, I have my snow blower. I snow blow both sides of my block. It's one of my favorite things. It's one of the ways I made friends with my neighbors, I guess, because that was something that happened at my old place in Avondale. Is we had someone who pulled out their big snow blower, did both sides of the block. So when we moved to this new house, I bought the big snow blower so I could do both sides of the block. I don't let that bother me. And so I think, Chicago just has everything that you would want. And it's certainly more affordable than New York or California. And having spent a fair amount of time in Denver over the last couple of years and having some clients out there, it's less expensive to live here than Denver these days. It's a little insane, some of these housing markets that are out there. And so Chicago's not perfect, but it's just it's better to me than all the other places that exist out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point about the about how every time there's a really big snow, I actually really, I mean, I hate it and love it in other ways. I mostly hate it, I guess, but it's cool that it can really bring out sort of like the best of humanity in us a little bit, because there's, I mean, pretty much every time I see, I've been on the receiving end and the giving end of, strangers helping each other get out of jams. The place I lived in before, we parked in an alley that never got plowed or anything, and or salted or anything. So pretty much every time there was a snow, it was like, all right, yeah, let me get the shovel, let me help this guy, or they'll help me, or try to do the trick where you find some like piece of cardboard and put it under the tire to try to get traction, and it never works, but you at least feel like tried to help. And yeah, it's just kind of a cool thing to see. But then on the other hand, you have people calling dibs and putting chairs out on on the street and all that kind of stuff to save their spot. So I mean, I guess you have a little bit of that too. But
Yeah, I
I
mean, I
didn't
think that I think the human. I mean, I think that Chicago, like there still is that warm Midwestern spirit. I mean,
totally.
we were talking about Dallas. Like that was one of the things I noticed about Dallas. Dallas, most people didn't seem very willing to lend a helping hand. I get that feeling when in Southern California too a lot. I think Chicago, you get a lot of just a lot of humanity out of the people there. So.
Yeah. I didn't know it was supposed to snow 10 inches though. I haven't looked at the weather. Well,
That's what they're saying
oh well.
Friday. So we'll see if that happens.
Part of the deal. That's January in a nutshell though. We earn our summers. That's why the summers in Chicago are so great, because once it comes around, it's just everybody's just so happy that it's not winter anymore. You're not going to get that in a place that's just the same all year round. But
Well, listen, talk to anybody in Southern California. I mean, listen, if it's 68 and rainy, they go to pieces, right? Because it's just horrible for them. In by their estimation that it should even deign to rain on them, and they sort of take it for granted. So when you have a little bit of the not so great weather, you appreciate the great weather a little bit more.
exactly. Exactly. Well, hey Chris, that's all I have for you. We did it.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
I
Anything?
appreciate.
Any? Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show. This was fantastic. I guess we figured out what to talk about for the last hour.
I guess so. Seems didn't seem too hard at all. Yeah, anything before I hit the stop the record on this? Any other things you want to highlight or promote or anything like that? If
Yeah.
not, it's
So
okay.
the last thing that I would say, right, is that I got to be part of an absolutely fantastic book. So we wrote. I'm one of 28 authors in this book called More Than Money.
Hmm.
So this talks about what the real life stories of financial planning are, and all of the proceeds are being donated to financial education, and to promote equity and inclusion in the financial planning world, because we do tend to be a lot of crusty old white guys in my profession. So that was what we donated that money to. We're currently in the process of writing More Than Money too. So that'll be out, but that probably won't be out till 2025, because it is crazy how long the publishing process is. But
Hmm.
if you want to go to Amazon and get More Than Money and find out a little bit more about what real financial planning can make an impact in people's lives, that would be fantastic.
That's amazing. Congratulations for being on that, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. You say it's just on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Okay, I'll have your website and Amazon a link to that book in the show notes.
Fantastic.
All right, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jake.